Hi there, it is Mr. White here, jumping in with some more information about Space Cadet, this math adventures workbook, activity book, and really story and whole world that I'm creating, and I'm just having so much fun doing, and I cannot wait to bring it to you, my students, maybe my future students, maybe students I don't even know, maybe even adults. You guys, as I'm creating this, I'm like, I would have loved this because I love reading and just the creativity that is being poured into this. But I want to share with you what this page looks like, jumping into a little bit more about how we will go through the math side of this, because while building the world and the story is like one of my favorite parts of this creative project, just as important and like really the reason I'm creating this is for the math, because as I mentioned, as a teacher, I learned we need to bring these maybe tough subjects or harder subjects, and really I think all subjects, to students as one, showing that you can have fun and enjoy the subject, and then two, you just need a lot of practice. So that is what I am building here. So as a parent, be encouraged that that is forefront in my mind. I've spent a whole year learning that myself, figuring out the best ways to teach difficult and tough subjects, as well as figure out how can I get more practice for my class, because that's what they really needed and will need as I continue teaching on in the future. So take a look right here, the FSF training board, and this is the workflow. And I have a little message at the top there. That's how Commander Octavius is going to be interacting with the cadet as they work their way through this. Just a really fun little like electronic message, because the FSF watchman is in space and the cadet is on Earth. They have not gone up to space yet. Boom, boom, boom. So, book 2, they may or may not graduate and get to fly out to space. You shall see. But that is just letting the cadet know. They'll be checking in throughout it, familiar yourself with how each element of the mission will begin. So that is what this training board is for. So it's letting us know in a fun way. First, as you get to the lesson, you're going to have a training module. And so that's going to be going over how do we actually do the math. Because when I was thinking of it, I was like, even if I were a kid, if I were an adult too, and I hadn't done some of this math in a while, even like a few weeks since school got out, I'd be like, how do I do this again? So the training module will show an example as well as like a mini lesson of like, here are the steps we take, here's why we do this, here you go, here's a worked out example, and then here's maybe 3 or 4 examples for you to do and to practice doing it. All right, great. Then from there, we go to training exercises, and that's proving your mission readiness. What that means is we have some more practice problems, and I am going to do my best to do these as mixed problems, because another thing that you will see as you're working with students, and even yourself, if you're doing math, and this is what I found so frustrating as math got harder as I got older, was like, I know how to do it, but then they just throw you a page and you just see a mess of problems. You're like, can you just tell me what do you want me to do? So if like one whole section is just do this, then I'm like, I can do that. But once you mix it in, that's where you're not just, counting on your memory and then knowing, oh, I know how to do this because I just practiced division and now this section is division. But no, let's throw in addition, subtraction, multiplication. Let's put some fractions. Let's put the distributive property, which was so hard for so many students. You're mixing it in, so it's not just, oh, I know what to do. It's you need to use your mind to say, okay, I have learned the mission skill, and now I'm proving I'm ready by using my mind to work through what is the problem asking me to do, and then I can do it because I know how to do the problem. And that's a big disconnect I saw when it came to word problems, is that a lot of students first needed to know like how to do the actual math, and then we make it a little harder by throwing in that extra step of thinking. But how God made our minds is that this time in the student's life in middle school is actually the perfect time to be jumping into that logic stage. So from there we go to number 3, which is decoding assignment, and you're going to apply the skills that you've just learned and that you've practiced to prove you're ready to the actual mission and the decoding. So that's where it jumps into like, cool, we are figuring out what the next step of this story is, what's going on, what gets me to the next part of the story. And then intelligence report, just summing everything up at the end of, alrighty, now here's what we learned from this. Now that I've finished all of the math, done something fun as well, I still need to figure out where I put that into it. But should also be a recap of like what did they learn from the story part, and that's what I'm going to share just in a moment with you. So I'm really excited for that. And then the thing at the bottom, all cadets must complete the full training sequence before reporting findings to mission control. As a parent, if you're watching this, it would be checking to make sure you're a student, and if you're a student, please actually do the work, because that's what this book is for. I think the story is going to be killer, where you just want to figure out the story, but keep in mind that while you're excited for the story, use that to fuel your enjoyment for doing the math itself, because it's going to be so much fun and really rewarding as you're figuring out, like, oh, wow, I just decoded the message, so let's keep going. So it's going to be great. But this is phase 1. This covers chapter 1 of what we learned in this fundamental class and course that I taught. And so you'll just see right there, I'll let you read them, but we go through quite a bit. Each phase is going to have 7 lessons. So parents, be happy. Your student is going to learn so much. And a lot of it should be review, but will mostly just be great practice that we all need. We all need to practice. But I wanted to share this story. So if you want to log off now, you can, or come back to it. It's about 4 pages long, but right as we're getting into doing the math, right before that, you are going to get a chunk of the story. And I spent this morning creating this a few hours, which is like a few hours, but I think it is coming together so great. And usually with creative works, I wait a day or 2 or 3 and I go back and edit. So what I'm reading with you now is probably not going to be what gets printed, but it's going to be fairly close to this. And I hope that this is what brings the most excitement for wanting to jump into this. Because for parents, yes, you want your kid to do math and to stay up to date and progress as they should. But for students, I think you want to have fun. If you're going to be forced to do math anyways, don't you want to have an awesome story where you can fit yourself within there and just get excited for doing what you are already going to have to do? So let's go ahead and get started with this. Commander Octavius looked across the bridge, which had begun clearing out of officers. It was just an hour ago that the watchman intercepted the encrypted transmission, and the alert was sounded. Red blinking lights, codes being transmitted over radios in the PA system, as well as a rush of officers quickly took their stations as they'd done many times before. Something about this intercept was different, though. The watchman was used to receiving transmissions and gathering intelligence, as this was their primary task within the Freedom Stealth Fleet. They were specially trained to gather information and perform reconnaissance without being seen, and excelled at putting the unseen pieces together that threatened freedom. Typically, when they intercepted transmissions, they knew where it came from. It was one of the more basic flows of intelligence gathering they had in place from the many years of building up the needed infrastructure and tools. However, with this specific transmission, there was no known origin. The message had to have come from somewhere, so that was not the startling part to the commander. What first set off the warning light in his mind was that FSF had some of the most advanced tools in the universe. If this transmission was able to shield its location, then it meant they had made a huge error in judgment. Who else had the capability of shielding their location? How long has this been going on? How many messages have been sent out that we potentially missed? What kind of new threat is out there? These were all questions running through his mind as his team followed their well-run procedures. Minutes later, though, additional troubling items about the transmission were brought to the commander's attention. Commander, sir, our initial software was having trouble decrypting the origin of the transmission. We sent it below deck to our decryption team to get some further specialist insight, and they've just gotten back to us. It's like nothing they've seen before and cannot be decrypted with our current setup. The next trouble came when he got a similar report from another officer. The transmission message itself was also heavily encrypted and in a way that they had not seen before. Their current software, tools, and specialists could not decrypt it. That's not to say they could never decrypt, as the commander knew he had the best crew the universe could offer. What it meant, though, was that it would not be the quick encryption to reconnaissance flow they were so well adapted and used to. It reminded him of when they first started out the FSF and all worked from the Genesis, the first ship and current mothership to the entire fleet. They were just a small group of scientists, leaders, military, law enforcement, and explorers that came together to lead a charge that was bigger than the universe itself, to honor and follow the Lord in all they did, and to protect the freedom endowed to humanity from tyranny. Back then, they received regular transmissions that could not be easily broken. It could take anywhere from a few hours to a few days before they could distinguish where it came from and what was being sent. In trickier situations, it could take a few weeks to decrypt what was being intercepted. Fast forward, though, and they hadn't received a transmission like this for a few years. In fact, the commander took pride in the watchman's ability to have tabs on all that was going on in the intelligence world, pride that he now feared was a potential error on his part. He knew that pride came right before a fall, the verse from Proverbs 16:18 coming to mind, though he didn't think he had let himself become prideful, or at least not to the extent the Bible warns about. However, years of experience had taught him that this was the true enemy's tactic. Make man think he's confident in his own ways, his hard work, leadership, and years of building experience, to distance him from the Lord and ultimately take him down. It was right as he was beginning to realize this and almost letting himself fall into a dark mental place when he remembered a verse his mentor back on earth had shared with him many times during his early career. When pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with humility comes wisdom. Proverbs 11:2. This brought the commander the small encouragement he needed to keep his head level and back to the operating speed he needed now more than ever. Before doing anything else, though, he quietly prayed in no more than a murmur. Lord, please forgive me for the self-pride and self-reliance I've fallen into. I ask now that you help me to remain humble and give me both the wisdom and strength I need to lead the watchman through this situation. Right as he was brought back to the blinking lights and the sound of his working officers, he received the final blow to the entire situation that was unfolding in real time before them. Commander, I need your attention over here. As the commander quickly made pace to his intelligence mapping officer, he was directed to a giant screen that showed a map of Earth. In his mind, he gave an audible gasp of what he saw. Thankful he had learned to keep a steady and emotionless face for situations just like this, he continued to scan the digital map before him. Tiny yellow lights began turning on, one by one across the world map. Not just in the usual countries that were under tight FSF surveillance, but every main intelligence country and hub of the world. This was not good. Not only were they unable to decrypt the transmission and its origin, but now they were officially out of the loop and were on the outs of what was happening, something they were specifically there on the watchman to prevent. The commander thanked the officer and returned to his post. He spent a few moments prioritizing the next steps to take, steps he hadn't used in a few years, but thankfully still remembered. He stood tall and composed and shouted, "Attention! All stations stand by for priority orders." Immediately, his crew snapped to attention and the room dropped to dead silence. In perfect step, his XO and second in command responded in a clear tone. "Bridge is yours, Commander. Standing by, sir." The commander gave a slight inward smile to himself with how expertly his crew operated and silently thanked the Lord for them. If he had to be walking into this situation, he'd want to do it with no one else. Commander Octavius detailed to the bridge the FSF 101A protocol that he would be requesting Mission HQ activation and authorization for. It was older protocol that every recruit at the academy reads about, but one that was rarely ever used. The commander himself had not used it in a few years, but was grateful for a sharp memory that retained the full details of the protocol. Following this, he ordered that they remain on call for when authorization came from Mission HQ and dismissed them. He needed them ready at a moment's notice. The commander silently paced the bridge as he was accustomed to doing when he needed to think. Earlier in the week, he received communication that the latest round of recruits on Earth had just finished the FSF Training Academy. Most notable was that this was the highest-ranking graduation class FSF had ever seen. They had surpassed every obstacle thrown their way and promised to have a bright future within FSF. More specifically, what he recalled was that this was the first round of cadets to go through the updated training that brought back the old-school methods and craft of their work. Nowadays, most of his crew only knew how to operate the different high-tech tools and software. While extremely important and valuable, he saw they would need the old-school methods for their current situation. For the first time ever, he would be requesting cadet authorization. He smiled to himself as he walked over to draft the mission activation request and thought to himself, man, the captain sure knew what he was doing. Okay, there you have it. What do you think? This is the next slide where now I'm building out the math part of it. So parents, be excited, but students, let me know. And I think parents too. Wasn't this so cool and so fun? I mean, I know I tripped up at a little bit of the place, but man, it gets me so excited for this entire project and really that I'm going to get to create a story, a book, basically. Like not just a coloring book as I've done, not an activity book as I've also done before, but this is a math activity book, but also this is a story. And so it'll really be, in my mind, an interactive story like none other, where we now know, like, why are we using US students? Why are we calling in the cadets? It's because, and this is parallel to our world right now, so many of us as adults, we just use our phones, we're using calculators, we're using AI, we're using so much high-tech gear that can do amazing and wonderful and like super cool things. But what about our minds? Do we know how to do, like I talked about last class, no, Mr. White, last video, long division, some of these things, the order of operations, what is that? PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. What? Do we know how to do that? And so I think in this story, that is what is so cool with, as I was writing it, coming together was, oh, we actually have a reason now, and it's just like our world today. Like, how cool is that? That society, hopefully, you know, the school I teach at knows this, like, knows how important it is to train up our young kids to have use of their brains, the logic, the grammar, the rhetoric, all of that on a biblical worldview and foundation. And so that is what I've been able, and just hopefully you've got to see, interweave into this story that I think is so cool and really makes sense why they're not allowed to use calculators, why they need to show their work, because it's showing that this old form of, you know, decryption in the context of the story, that is needed. The current stuff cannot do it. So I think that is like maybe clever, which it's not great to call yourself clever, right? Oh, what a great move I made. No, the Lord is definitely guiding and leading me through all of this. So I hope this was exciting though. Like I said last video, go ahead and sign up so that you can be up to date with everything that is going on within this, and I'll be in touch soon.